Hi guys. This is to replace the last video that I did because it was the video or the audio was just far too low for people, and I do apologize for that. I'm hoping that I've got it corrected now because I do have some really important things to tell you, and I came across this whole Q thing. And if you're not familiar with this, there has been somebody posting on 4chan and on 4chan, on the 4chan forums, in the politically incorrect forum, somebody by the name of Q has been posting, and it started on October 31st, and that was when the first post was made. And I really didn't hear about it until, oh gosh, several days ago. And it's been all I can think about. And I'll get into why in a second, but this person, when I first heard it, I didn't know what to think of it, really. I had put on a YouTube video and I was listening to something else while I was getting ready, and you know how YouTube, it'll just go into the next video. Well, that's what happened, and that's how I heard about it, because it just so happened that when it went into the next video, it was somebody talking about this Q. So that was how I originally heard about it, and I was absolutely, when I started listening to it, I had to just sit down and, like, for the rest of the day, that's all I looked at, is all these posts. At first, I wasn't convinced, but I quickly became convinced that this person has high-level intel. To me, it's obvious, and, you know, I first thought, oh, it's just somebody LARPing, but I can't see that, because they accurately predicted Podesta's indictment, Uma's indictment, and there's just several other things that they've been able to forecast that they would not have had. They wouldn't have known that. They wouldn't have had access to that information if they didn't have top level clearance. Now, Q is supposed to stand for Q level clearance, which is, you know, above top secret clearance. But I found it interesting because a friend of mine, when I was talking about all this, I had called her and I wanted her to look into this. And she said, well, you know what Q is, right? And she said, it just reminds me of Star Trek. Well, I was never a Star Trek fan. I really can't stand Star Trek. I'm sorry. I'm not into sci-fi. And so she had to inform me about what it was. And let me see here if I can pull up what she sent me. My computer's a little bit slow, and so please forgive me. But I think this is really interesting. Here it says that the Q were a seemingly omnipotent and immortal species who inhabited the Q continuum, possessing the ability of instantaneous matter-energy transformation and teleportation, as well as the ability of time travel. The Q had control over space, time, matter, and energy. In addition, Q spectacularly claimed to possess an IQ of 2005. They didn't make official contact with the Federation until 2364, when the crew of the USS Enterprise D met Q. At least one Q, acting on his own, had intervened and influenced human affairs since at least the time of Isaac Newton. So I just think that's interesting. And I guess the reason why I found it interesting is because this whole series of posts by Q really reminded me of what I came out of. And I have a website called Deception Bites. I've written a book called The View Beneath. I think I have a picture of it. There it is. I wrote the book The View Beneath, and it's available on Amazon. But I was involved with the Dominionist movement for years and years and years, probably 20 years. And I came out of it. But it's interesting, this alarmed me because of my involvement with the Dominionist movement. And as I move along, it's going to become clearer why that is. And if you're not familiar with Dominionism, you really need to get familiar with it because they have had plans to take over, and they've had these plans for a very long time, and they are implementing them with military precision. I was in the 90s involved, and some of the things in the 90s that were said that they were going to happen, that they had plans to do, have truly come to pass, and it's frightening. It's very frightening. It is a cult. The beliefs have leaked into most of mainstream churches in America, and they don't even know that they are dominionist ideas. And that's what's so shocking, is that most churches in America have some form of dominionism in them now. So anyway, let me get going with this because I don't want to belabor this too long. But I'm going to start with the first post, and that was posted on October 31st. And we're just going to go through these. I'm going to try to give you as in-depth of an analysis as I can at this time. So here we are, October 31st, and the first post was at 11 p.m. And the first thing that Q says is he puts these letters SCI and then bracket F. I'm not sure what the bracket F means, but I know that SCI stands for Secret Compartmentalized Information. The next thing he writes is MI. That stands for Military Intelligence. And then he asks, what is state secrets and how are they upheld in the Supreme Court is what he's asking. Well, the state secret privilege is a common law privilege that allows the heads of an executive department to refuse to produce evidence in a court case on the grounds that the evidence is secret information that would harm national security or foreign relation interests if disclosed. The interesting thing I found about that when I was looking it up is that, they can claim state secret, but really don't have to prove it to a judge. And so it's really kind of thrown around willy-nilly without any checks and balances there. That was concerning to me because I didn't realize that. What must be completed to engage military intelligence over other three-letter agencies, which is FBI, CIA, NSA? What must occur for civilian trials? Now, as far as I know, for a civilian trial to take place, there has to be, it has to involve treason. Now, I don't know when the last time that would have happened, but that is what must occur for a civilian trial, is that person has to have committed treason, that government official. Why is this relevant? Well, I think it's relevant because I think that there are people that have committed treason, and to me it's quite obvious, and I think it'll be obvious to you as well. Why is this relevant? Well, that's what I just went over. Now, what was Flynn's background? Well, and I put BBC here because, not that he's worked for the BBC, but because I got this information from the BBC. He is a foreign agent. He was a spy. And I put Michael Flynn's short tenure as Donald Trump's national security advisor ended in controversy when he resigned over contacts he had made with Russia before Mr. Trump took office. After just 23 days on the job, Mr. Flynn was forced out over revelations that he had discussed lifting U.S. sanctions on Russia with their ambassador to Washington, and that he had lied to the U.S. vice president about that conversation. Since his departure, revelations have kept on coming. Since Mr. Flynn left the White House, the Pentagon has launched an investigation into whether he failed to disclose payments from Russian and Turkish lobbyists that he was given for speeches and consulting work. In March, he registered with the U.S. government as a foreign agent due to his work for the Turkish government. Why is this relevant? Well, I think that whoever Q is telling us that it is relevant. So there's got to be something about that fact. I mean, it's bad enough that he was a foreign agent. Now, why did he put ADMR, and then he put in brackets NSA, meet Trump privately without authorization. Well, that he's referring to Admiral Michael S. Rogers, and he is the head of the NSA. Now, he is saying that he met with him privately without authorization. And I would assume that if he did that, there would have been some information that he had to give him, some sort of intelligence. There had to be a reason that he met with him privately without authorization. And it's interesting, as we get up further, you'll see that he is the only person that was not replaced by Donald Trump. All the other agencies, the heads of the other agencies were replaced, but not this one. So this person, even though they're left over from the previous administration, must be trustworthy in Trump's eyes to do that. Does POTUS, and of course POTUS stands for President of the United States, I think everyone knows that. Does POTUS know where the bodies are buried? Well, by the very fact of him asking that question, I think he's saying yes. And that he does. Otherwise, why would he need to ask that question? Does POTUS have the goods on most bad actors? And again, I think this is rhetorical. He's saying that yes, the POTUS does have the goods on most bad actors. Yes, he does know where the bodies are buried. Was Trump asked to run for president? Well, again, to me, the very fact that he's asking this question is fact that Q believes that Trump was asked to run for president. And as we get further along, it'll become evident that this person, Q, is probably Trump that is posting this. And I know that sounds ridiculous, and it sounded ridiculous to me as well. But as you get further along, I think you'll be convinced of the very same thing. So was Trump asked to run for president? I would say yes, if this person is asking this question. Why? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. I guess the first thing that occurred to me when Trump ran for president was that they were putting somebody in that was bound to lose because Hillary had been predestined to have the presidency. That's what I believed. And that so they put somebody in there that would be sure to lose. But as we'll see later, Q is suggesting that Trump was guaranteed that there would be no tampering in the polls. So we'll just go on from here. Was Trump asked to run for president? I would say yes. Why? I'm not sure. By who? Again, I'm not sure, but I can just about guarantee it's by military intelligence or perhaps Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. I don't know, but it was somebody within the government, obviously. And I don't think it would have been anybody that is loyal to the Democrats. Was HRC next in line? And HRC, of course, is Hillary Rodham Clinton. And yes, she was. I believe that with all my heart, that she was meant. They believed, they had her pegged as the next president. Was the election supposed to be rigged? Well, again, he's asking a rhetorical question, I believe, because I think by the very fact of him asking this question, he's answering it. Yes, the election was supposed to be rigged. Did good people prevent the rigging? Again, I think he's giving us the answer, yes, but I would say not entirely, because there was still evidence of tampering. Dead people being registered to vote, which is quite the feat. There was illegals voting, and I want to say something about that, illegals voting, because I am a legal resident of the United States. I have a green card. I'm here legally. I paid money to be here. I went through all the checks and balances, and I agree with all that, because I think that the Americans deserve that, to be protected. I had to prove that I was of sound mind. I had to prove that I had no communicable diseases. I had to prove that my taxes for 10 years to make sure that I wouldn't be a burden on the people. And I think that that's perfectly acceptable. I had to prove that I had all my immunization and all that, because they're trying to protect the public, and I'm all for that. But one thing is, everywhere I went, like to get my driver's license or whatever, they were always trying to register me to vote. And I don't even know, I've lost count of how many times I had to say I can't vote. But did they ever check? Did they ever check if I could vote or not? No. So I know for a fact I could have gone anywhere and voted, like in any election in the United States, even though it expressly forbids me from doing so as a legal resident. I cannot vote. Now, if I become a naturalized citizen and have my full citizenship, then I can vote. But as a legal resident, I cannot vote. So, but they do not check. So if they don't check with me, I doubt that they would check with illegal aliens either. So I can assure you that there are a lot of illegal aliens that are voting in U.S. elections, and they don't have that right. And just like I don't have that right. I don't have that right just because I'm living there to vote. I'm not a citizen. So I just want to say that. And I think that that is a form of tampering as well, because if they're not checking, and you've got somebody running for president that's promising to do all this stuff for illegal aliens, I mean, obviously, they're going to go out and vote for that person. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there because a lot of Americans aren't even aware of that. And I've told people that, and they've looked at me incredulously, thinking, come on, you're making this up. No, I cannot vote. And yet, I've lost track of how many times, and I get very tired of explaining it. So because I'm honest, I've never voted in the U.S. election. So anyway, we'll just leave that there and go on. Did good people prevent the rigging? So I said yes, but not entirely. Why did POTUS form a panel to investigate? Well, he did in fact form a panel, and it's a Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. And I said because Trump is aware of voter fraud, the Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity, also called the Voter Fraud Commission, is a temporary commission established in May 2017 by the United States President Donald Trump. Trump's Executive Order 13799. The Trump administration has said the commission would review claims of voter fraud, improper registration, and voter suppression. The establishment of the commission follows through on previous unsubstantiated claims by Trump that millions of illegal immigrants had voted in the 2016 United States presidential election. And Mike Pence, Vice President Mike Pence, serves as the chair of the commission. Now, it says previously unsubstantiated claims, but honestly, I think everybody knows it's a joke. I know that illegals are voting. I know illegals that have voted. So anyway, we'll leave that there, but it is happening. No matter what anyone says, it is happening. Has POTUS ever made a statement that did not become proven as true or fact? I said not to my knowledge, but I don't know every statement that he's made, and I don't know how that question, obviously that he's leading, it's kind of rhetorical, he's leading us to say, no, everything he said has come true, but I don't know that as a fact, so I'm not going to answer that. What is POTUS in control of? And I said military. What is the one organization left that isn't corrupt? And I said military. I don't know if they're corrupt or not, but I think that this person is saying that they're not. I would hope that they're not. Why does the military play such a vital role? Because they're going to need that military for the coup that they're planning. So we'll get into that later on in the post. But why is POTUS surrounded by highly respected generals? Because they're crucial to his plans, and obviously he must trust them. So he would not surround himself by people he doesn't trust, and he wouldn't surround himself with generals if they weren't crucial to his plans. So whatever plans he has, they're military plans, and there's no doubt about that. So that is the first post that was made, and we're going to go up to the second post now. So this one was made at 11 p.m. and Q says, there are more good people than bad. The wizards and warlocks, inside term, will not allow another satanic, evil, POS. Now, I don't use foul language, but to me it's pretty evident that POS is probably piece of shit. So he says there are more good people than bad. The wizards and warlocks, inside term, will not allow another satanic POS control our country. Realize Soros, Clinton's, Obama, Putin are all controlled by three families. The fourth was removed post-Trump victory. Anything you see here in red, I forgot to mention this earlier, anything you see here in red is my notes. Anything over to the side is my notes. So just keep that in mind, that on the left side, anything here that's in black is indeed been written by Q. And anything in red is my notes to keep track myself. So he's saying that Soros, Clinton, Obama, Putin are all controlled by three families. The fourth was removed post-Trump victory. Well, I think it's obvious that Rockefellers and Rothschilds are two of them. There's no question in my mind. And when you go and you view who the most powerful families in the world are, the Bush family's on there. And so I think it was the Bush family that he's referring to as the fourth that was removed post-Trump victory. That's what he's claiming, that they have been removed from their power and control. So the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, I have no doubt about. The fourth one, I have no doubt that was Bush. The third family, I don't know, but it could be Morgan or DuPont. They are two very, very influential names. So I don't know exactly which ones he's referring to, other than Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Now, this is interesting. Notice this was posted October 31st. Yet he tells us 11.3 Podesta indicted, 11.6 Huma indicted. Interesting. This is days before it's happened, and he's predicting it. And the reason he's predicting it here is to prove who he is. And it's interesting because that's exactly when they were indicted. So let's go down. And Q says Manafort was placed into Trump's camp as well as others. Now, when he says placed there, he means he was a plant, that he was planted there by someone. And we'll just go up here and I'll tell you who he is. He's a former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor, and he's pleaded guilty to making a false statement to the FBI after he lied about his interactions with foreign officials close to the Russian government. The campaign's clearest connection so far to Russia's efforts to meddle in the 2016 election. So that's who he is. He's a former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor, and he has pleaded guilty to making false statements. The next thing that Q says is the corruption will come out. The corruption that will come out is so serious that deals must be cut for people to walk away. Otherwise, 70% of elected politicians would be in jail. You are seeing it already begin. A deep cleaning is occurring, and the prevention and defense of pure evil is occurring on a daily basis. They never thought they were going to lose control of the presidency, not just Democrats, and thought they had control since making past mistakes, parentheses, JFK and Reagan. Good speed, patriots. P.S. Soros is targeted, and I put in brackets there for takedown because that's obviously what that means. And I think this is interesting because I want to, and I'm not so sure he isn't saying this, but he's posing this defense of pure evil, okay? And he's saying 70% of elected politicians would be in jail. Now, I am all for cleaning out the government. I'm all for that. Let's clean it out. But let's make sure we clean it out on both sides, because it's not just the Democrats that have been involved in pedo rings and pedophile rings and trafficking and money laundering and any number of things. I could go on and on and on. It's not just the Democrats. The Republicans have had their own scandals, like call boys at the White House. And if you haven't heard about that, you can Google that. That's a well-known fact, that there were call boys at the White House. And also Google the Franklin cover-up. And those are just two things that occur off the top of my head. So I'm just saying that if we're going to clean house, let's clean house on both sides. And that's it for that post. But this is the important part right here, is this prediction of these coming indictments, because very few people would have known on October 31st who was being indicted. All right, the next post is at 11:31 on October 31st. I guess Q had a lot of time on his hands that night. And he says, get the popcorn. Friday and Saturday will deliver on the MAGA, and that's Make America Great Again, promise. POTUS knows he must clean house government in order to free up and demonstrate who has authority to pass important legislation. This was always the priority. Remember, Attorney General Sessions cannot look like an impartial player that is out to get all former Obama team members, as we need him for other important work. All will come into focus, and for anyone to think POTUS is not in control is kidding themselves. Also, he's 100% insulated with zero risk of impeachment. Fact. So, it's interesting. I guess I found this really interesting because he said, POTUS knows he must clean house in order to free up and demonstrate who has authority in order to pass important legislation. So he's wanting to clean house, not because it's the right thing to do, but because he wants to free up and demonstrate who has authority, because he has important legislation to pass. Now, this concerns me. It concerns me for many reasons. But here's the thing. He goes on and says, remember, Attorney General Jeff Sessions cannot look like an impartial player. Right there, he's telling us that he's not an impartial player. He can't look like an impartial player, but he is. That's what he's saying. That is out to get all former Obama team members, as we need him for other important work. So is he impartial? Is he out to get all former Obama team members? Sorry, that's my my clock bonging. I don't know. I mean, if we're going to clean house, let's clean house, but don't use this like, you don't want to see. Right now, everybody's accusing everybody else of being a pedophile, and I know that it's rife in the government, and everyone knows that. But I would be concerned that this might become another form of McCarthyism. When everybody, they would call somebody a communist just to ruin their political career. Just the fact that they were accused would ruin their career, and they would be blackballed, and so it became the thing to do. Whether they were guilty or not, it didn't matter. Just the mere fact that they were accused wreaked havoc in their life. And I'm seeing this with this pedophile thing. Now, I'm not doubting the whole pedophile ring and that there is a worldwide network of pedophilia. There's no question. I mean, it's already come up that the call boys in the White House, there's been all sorts of, the Franklin cover up, I mean, all sorts of things. And then there's the emails that leaked, with Podesta and all the little code words. And I mean, to me, that it's very obvious, but it could become a form of McCarthyism where you just, your enemy, you can accuse them of pedophilia, and then they're left to prove that they're not. So anyway, I just wanted you to think about that, because that's been in my mind and on my heart. And he's saying all will come into focus, and for anyone to think that POTUS is not in control is kidding themselves. He's 100% insulated with zero risk of impeachment. That concerns me, because what if he needed to be impeached? I'm not saying he does. I'm just saying that there are checks and balances in the system for a reason. Now, I realize don't send me all sorts of hate mail. I know everything has to be cleaned up, and it's great. I'm just concerned that he's doing the right thing for the wrong reason. And you'll see further up where he starts couching this in terms of a holy war. That's what really made my hair stand on end, because that is dominionism, and it's how, well, that's what Hitler did. He, there's all sorts of quotes by Hitler where he has, he ran on the platform of making Germany great again and returning, the glory of the kingdom. And, he appealed to the Christians because he spoke like a Christian. But anyway, I'll move along because I don't want to be here all night, because this is the second time that I've done this. Okay. I'm going to go up to the next one now. And it too is on October 31st at 11:58. Why does Obama travel in advance of POTUS to foreign locations? Now, I wasn't at all sure that that was true at all, and I had not heard that. But when I looked into it, that is true. Obama is going to these places, and it's been in the news. And if it didn't take so long to pull up my news, I could show you. But I think I'm going to skip that because it's taking forever for my computer. I need to stick in some more RAM there to get it to pump it up a bit, because it's a little anemic. So anyway, I'm going to skip these right now, but you can check this out yourself, that they were in the same country at the same time. And I put over here as a note too that Barack Obama was the most traveled U.S. president in history and has traveled to 9 countries since leaving office. So why does Obama travel in advance of POTUS to foreign locations? Well, obviously, it's to undermine his efforts in those countries. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. Why else would... I've never heard of a former president doing that to a sitting president, being in the same country at the same time. That's ridiculous. Why is this relevant? Well, because he's undermining Trump's efforts. Focus on the power of POTUS as it relates to the Marines. Now, this is interesting because I believe that he's telling us that he intends to use that power because you'll see all the little comments about the Marines and so forth. I think he's intending to use that power. How can military intelligence be How can military intelligence be applied to prosecute bad actors and avoid corrupt agencies and judges? Now, SAP stands for, Special Access Programs. And so since 9/11, all these agencies, the CIA, the NSA, what's the other one? The FBI, they all have the same special access program. So it appears to me that they all have access to one another's intelligence. And I think that makes sense post 9/11 because they were wanting to share intelligence and so forth. So I think that that's, he's saying, how can this be applied? How can military intelligence be applied to prosecute these bad actors while avoiding the corrupt agencies and judges in the three-letter agencies? And I don't know. And then he says, biggest drop on poll, which is the politically incorrect forum on 4chan. Above is the reason why the shills are sliding. I think we all know what a shill is. Anyone that's been on the internet knows what a shill is, so I'm not going to get into that. Above is the reason why the shills are sliding. In case you didn't know, shills log and send new info back to the ASF, which is the Army Special Forces, for instruction. They use a 5-prong prepackaged injection. One post auto-generates 4 more at random designated times. Common drive of posts they all tap into. Since they misjudge the influence of the MSM, mainstream media, they are aggressively looking to censor throughout major platforms in exchange for CIA slush funds and I would assume that's worldwide, access for expansion of said networks. Everything they do has been forecasted and prepared for. Now, I think all that is pretty self-explanatory, that, we know that this stuff is happening. We know that they log and send information back. We know that, you mention certain code words and all of a sudden these shills show up out of nowhere. We all know that. Anybody that spent time on forums knows that happens. And I recognized that was happening years and years and years ago when I started writing about the Dominionism. And I would write about certain people that are key to that agenda. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, people would be swarming in there to tear me to pieces. And I thought, where did these people come from? They came out of nowhere because there was nobody in the forum, and then all of a sudden it's like all these people show up and just start ripping into me. And I know, I've seen it with my own eyes time and time and time again. So let's move on to the next one. I'm going to try and not belabor these. I'm sorry, I get a little bit wordy and chatty. November 1st, 12:07 a.m. Why did Mueller meet POTUS one day prior to the FBI announcement? If Mueller could not be offered director due to previous term limits rule. Now, Mueller, of course, and I put over here who he is. Robert Mueller is an American lawyer and civil servant who was the 6th director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation from 2001 to 2013. A Republican, he was appointed by President George W. Bush, and his original 10-year term was given a 2-year extension by President Barack Obama, making him the longest-serving FBI director since J. Edgar Hoover. He is currently head of the Special Counsel investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 United States elections. So what Q is asking us is, why would Mueller have met with the president one day prior to the FBI announcement? Because it's not like Mueller could have been offered the director position because he had already had his term extended and it couldn't be extended anymore because of term limits. So he's asking, why did he meet with him? Well, I would assume that it was either concerning the Russia probe or to give him information. That's the only two things that I can think of. Why is Pelosi begging for a new special counsel? Well, it's because Mueller is not under their control. I think that what Q is telling us is that Mueller is a good guy and not under their control. And so Pelosi wants him out. She wants a new special counsel because she wants, indictments. What is Pelosi's net worth? The House minority's minimum net worth is $29.3 million. How was this obtained, given salary as a career official? Well, that's a good question, isn't it? How did she? And I think you're going to see that if you look into the salaries of these people and what their net worth is, it's astronomical. And you ask yourself, wait a minute, they don't make that much. I mean, they make a good wage, but not that much. Where are they getting all this money? Where's it coming from? And then he asks, why is Pelosi's memory going? Now, I was not aware of this. I've been in Canada for a while and had not been watching the U.S. news as much as I would like. And so I hadn't been aware of this. But when I went out and Googled it and watched several times that, I mean, it's obvious that there's something wrong. You know, she forgets, she calls President Trump President Bush, and she just forgets all sorts of things. And I think it's obvious that something's going on. So next he asks, could it protect against prosecution? Well, yeah. If you had Alzheimer's or you had some sort of an issue with your mind and with memory, it would make you a very unreliable witness. That's for sure. And you could claim anything that made you uncomfortable. You could claim you forgot. And how would they prove that you didn't? So I think, yes. But what Q is getting at here is that Pelosi's memory is going because it's convenient. It's a convenient way for her to get out of prosecution or witnessing or being a witness. That's what he is intimating here. Whether or not that's a fact, we don't know. We can't say if that's true or not. But Q is telling us that that's what's happening. How so? Well, she could claim she forgot when questioned. Now he asks something very interesting. What if John McCain's surgery was fake? Well, if you will recall, he had a brain tumor. In July 2017, he had something removed, and I put a little note on the side here. I said the 80-year-old lawmaker has glioblastoma, an aggressive cancer, according to doctors at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, where McCain had a blood clot removed from above his eye last Friday. So next, Q asks us, why would this occur? Well, what reason would someone have to fake a brain tumor? Well, to me, that's obvious what he's saying. I'm not sure it's obvious that it's true, but it's obvious what Q is saying is that he did this to prevent being prosecuted or testifying. And he said, what could this prevent potentially? Well, testifying, answering questions. What is the Mayo Clinic? Well, we know that is a global, it's part of the, I don't even know how to put it into words, but next he asks, who sits on the board of directors there? Well, interestingly enough, when I looked up who the board of directors were, the name Barbara Bush jumped out and slapped me. So obviously that's the name that he wants us to focus on. So what exactly is he saying? What's he saying? Well, it's obvious to me what Q is saying. Q is saying that Pelosi is faking her loss of memory, and that John McCain's surgery was fake, and that he doesn't have a brain tumor, or else he didn't have surgery to remove that blood clot over his eye. And he's saying this would occur because then he wouldn't have to testify or be prosecuted. And he's also saying that somehow Barbara Bush is involved in having this arranged. Whether or not this is true, I don't know of any way we could prove or disprove this, but Q is definitely telling us that that's the case. So let's go up to the next one. The next one is November 1st, 2017 at 12:29 a.m. Why do Democrats want to control the black population? Well, I've asked myself that same question. I really have. Why do they intentionally keep them poor and in need? And I said they want to further enslave them and control them by keeping them dependent. Why do Democrats project racism on a daily basis against the Democrats? Against the Republicans, sorry. Well, it's interesting. I'm just writing my thesis to finish my master's degree, and one of the books that I have just done a really in-depth analysis on is George Orwell's 1984. Now, I know probably a lot of you have read this book, maybe when you were a teenager or whatever. It would be a great book for you to go back to because it is so timely to what is happening right now. And one thing that really struck me is that in the book 1984, Big Brother had to keep the people riled up against an enemy. And they were always riling them up, getting them, to hate. They needed something to hate. They needed a face on the enemy. The enemy needed a face. And in this case, it's racism. It's like, the Republicans are racist. And what that does, what that serves is by keeping the people always hating something, always having an enemy, it keeps them needing the government to protect them. It's like, keep us, protect us from this racism. And in George Orwell's 1984, it's interesting because the enemy would change. And one minute they would be chanting against one enemy, but then Big Brother would say, this enemy is not our enemy anymore. This enemy is our friend. This over here, that's our enemy. And then everyone would get riled up about that. But they always had to keep them hating somebody. They always had to keep them riled up and at war. They always had to be at war with something. It made the sacrifices in their life make sense. It made the fact that, they didn't get enough to eat and that, their lives were so miserable. It made sense because it was all a sacrifice on the effort of the war. Kind of like the war on terrorism. Anyway, why do black elected officials do the crazy talk on behalf of Democrats? Well, to get and stay in power. I think that's pretty obvious. How do Democrats cover the historical fact of forming the Confederacy, KKK, and oppose all things pro-black legislation? Well, they can cover this because they control the narrative regarding the mainstream media. The mainstream media is always touting the narrative of the Democrats. And if you control the narrative, you can cover just about anything. If you're controlling it, then you can say, well, you know what? We're not going to run that news story. Or we're going to put this slant on that news story. And that's what happens all the time. And we know that's what's happening. Anyone that's awake knows that that's what's happening. What happens if the Democrats lose the slave grip on the black population? Well, I said in essence, the blacks exchanged one form of slavery for another. And I think if they lost their grip on the black population, I think maybe they could be free to be who they are meant to be, stand up and take their rightful place. What do Democrats, through the funding of the CIA, why do Democrats, through the funding of the CIA, prop up and install Hollywood media assets? And again, this is something else that anyone that has been awake knows is happening. And it's to control the narrative. Does this fall within Operation Mockingbird? It sure does. It definitely does. And if you don't know what Operation Mockingbird is, I will tell you. Over here, I've made a little note. Operation Mockingbird was an alleged large-scale program. Notice they say alleged. It's not so alleged. Operation Mockingbird was an alleged large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency that began in the early 1950s and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. But that's not happening today. No way. I mean, really? You think that would happen today? It's definitely happening today, and I think it's really obvious to anyone that has their eyes open and is paying attention to what's going on. The next question is, who exposed the pedo network? I never know whether to pronounce that pedo or pedo. I would assume that it's pedo for pedophile. Who exposed the pedo network within Hollywood? Well, the next question tells us we can't answer that, because Q says you can't answer the above, but we'll laugh once disclosed details. He's saying we're going to laugh. Once he discloses the details of who it is, we're going to laugh at who exposed the network. But since he's telling us that there's no way we could answer it, why should we even try? Because it's probably someone that we would never in a million years suspect. The network, which controls this false narrative, which in turn keeps the black population under control, is being dismantled, and well it should. False local and national black leaders will be exposed next as shills for the Democratic Party. And he says, follow the money. Maxine W., which is Maxine Waters, has a $4 million home and cash assets in excess of $6 million. How is that possible? And that's just one example. He's saying that's just one example that he's throwing out there. And how is it possible that, civil servants are so wealthy? I don't know. It just seems that all of them have a lot of wealth. And it's not that their salaries reflect that. And it says all of these questions help to paint the full picture. So, yeah, it's interesting. Now we're going to go up to the next one, and this is, and I'm keeping my eye on the time because last time the video was like an hour and a half, and not only was I exhausted after that time of speaking, but I think that's too long for anyone to pay attention. I really do. So I think I'm going to break it up into smaller little, tidbits, because that's too long for someone to try and pay attention. Okay, we're on to the next one. Who did POTUS meet with yesterday? And I said, he had the tax reform business meeting, and was Attorney General Sessions there? And I said maybe. And I'll tell you why I said that. Because when I went to the president's schedule, which is available, it's out there for anybody to see, and I couldn't find who was in those meetings. That's the one thing that I wasn't able to find. If anyone else can find that, that would be wonderful, but I wasn't able to find that, and usually I can if I dig hard enough. But the one thing I did see is I also went to Attorney General Sessions' schedule, and I looked at where he was supposed to be that day. And interestingly enough, when I first looked at it, it said that he was scheduled to be at the White House at 12:30 for a luncheon. Now, that's interesting because now when I go out and look, it's not there anymore. So I don't know what the deal is there, but it's gone. And I could swear that it was there because I don't know where else I could have pulled that information from. I looked specifically. It said that he would be there at 12:30 at the White House. I looked again, and it's gone. So I said maybe because I can't prove one way or another anymore. How many military intelligence generals were on the White House list to attend a separate meeting? And again, I cannot find the information of who attended what meetings. There was 3 meetings that day. There was the first one, the tax reform business, and that was held in the Roosevelt Room, which will become important. The second one was the luncheon, and I think it was held in the cabinet room, but I can't remember. And again, I could go out to the president's schedule, but it just takes so long. I am going to put more RAM in my computer so that I can, kind of pump it up on steroids a bit. So I don't know who was on the list to attend these meetings, but I do know that there was a tax reform business meeting in the morning. Then there was a luncheon, which was a foreign policy, something to do with foreign policy. Then in the afternoon, Trump was scheduled to meet with Paul Ryan, and he was scheduled to meet him in the Oval Office. Now, interestingly enough, that becomes necessary information, because he says, could those meetings have been combined? Well, by the very fact that he's asking that question, means no, they couldn't have. For some reason, they couldn't have been combined. And I think he gives us the answer as to why. Why were certain rooms in the White House renovated? Well, that's obvious. To remove listening devices and recording devices and so forth. I mean, obviously the Democrats handing it over to Republicans are going to do whatever they need to do to ensure their continued power, and they're going to put listening devices in the White House. It's been that way forever. But Trump decided to renovate and extensively these rooms and certain rooms. I think there were 3 rooms renovated. And 2 of those rooms that were renovated were the Roosevelt Room and the Oval Office, and I can't remember the third. But the cabinet room, or whatever room that they met with at noon, had not been renovated. So he's saying, where was the meeting on Monday? Well, it was in the Roosevelt Room. At least the tax reform business meeting was held in the Roosevelt Room. Why aren't phones allowed in this room? Well, that's obvious, because they could be used as recording devices. What firm was contracted to conduct the renovations? Now, this is interesting. This is very interesting, because they used several Native American firms and women-owned businesses, and they were all small businesses. The heating and air conditioning contractor was Calvary Mechanical Company, Inc., and the carpet contractor was Microbase Corp., both of which are minority-owned small businesses. So I thought that was very interesting, because aside from just being a good thing to do as an American president, why would he use small businesses? I think it's obvious, because the larger the business, the more opportunity they would have had to be compromised. And certainly he probably wanted to avoid any businesses that had been used in the past, just in case. So he hired people that he felt probably needed the business and that he could trust. That's would be my understanding. But it's interesting anyway. Now I'm going to go up to this next one, and this is November 1st at 12:48. And Q says, I've dumped some crumbs like this over the weekend, which started the intense shilling. At this point, we're far enough along you can paint the picture without risk of jeopardizing the operation. So not much to explain there. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Then November 1st at 12:57, he asks, who controls the National Guard? And this should be in red, because he didn't put National Guard like that. I did that, so I know what it was referencing. Sorry, just take me a second here. I don't want to misrepresent his words by putting mine. So, who controls the National Guard? Well, the governor of each state in times of peace controls them, but the president can call them up for federal duty. Now, why was the National Guard recently activated in select cities within the U.S.? Well, there were several reasons. Natural disasters like the flooding and the hurricane in Houston, and civil unrest, like riots, because there were, several cities. I think Charlotte, Ferguson, definitely. Charlotte, I think, Detroit. Those are the only ones that come to mind, but I think they were in Florida. They were definitely in Houston. So, and also terrorism. They can be deployed if there are acts of domestic terrorism. Now it says, can the National Guard work in coordination with the Marines? And when I looked that up, yes, they can. They can, and they have. There was legislation changed or whatever to allow that to happen. Do conditions need to be satisfied to authorize? Yes, they do. They have to. What is it? It has to be what they call insurrection. But as you'll find, they've changed the definition of what insurrection means to include national disasters, civil unrest, and domestic terrorism. And I think there's others that get in there as well. And so it's interesting because that is not what I would call insurrection. So it's kind of like they've fudged the, the Constitution. They've changed, the definition of insurrection, which is absolutely ludicrous when you think about it, because I think we all know what insurrection is. But I don't think it's such a bad thing that they're, employed in times of natural disasters and civil unrest and so forth. That's definitely not a bad thing. But it says, do conditions need to be satisfied to authorize? And yes, it needs to be under the definition of insurrection. What former president used the military to save the republic, and what occurred exactly? Well, I said Bush post 9/11, but I'm really not sure what the answer is that he's looking for here. But I did go and I found 12 times in the past that the National Guard has been called up by a president. And a lot of times it was, and here's my computer crawling like a turtle on Quaaludes, I'd say. Okay, 12 times the president called in the military domestically. And it was like the desegregation of Little Rock School, integration of University of Mississippi, integration of University of Alabama, integration of Alabama schools, Selma Montgomery Civil Rights March, Detroit riots, Chicago riots following the assassination of Martin Luther King, Washington riots following King's murder, Baltimore riots following King's murder, New York City postal strike, looting after Hurricane Hugo, and riots after Rodney King verdict. So that's 12 times that the president has used the National Guard. Now, he's saying, again, I don't know exactly what he's looking for here. I don't know. What did I say down here? I don't know. Biggest drop ever to be provided on poll. Now, 4chan's politically incorrect forum is what he's talking about. He's saying, study and prepare. The masses tend to panic in such situations. No war, no civil unrest, clean and swift. Now, that's interesting. The masses tend to panic in such situations. True enough. But he is saying no war, no civil unrest, clean and swift. So let's go up to the next one. It's interesting because here also I linked to the National Guard website. And if you're so inclined, go there and and look at the little section that says Keeper of the Dream and all these this wheat. I'll have to go there now. It is kind of creepy to me. I mean, is the National Guard the keeper of the dream? Really? Like, really? Whose dream? Yeah. National Guard, keepers of the dream. I guess we could play this for a second.
It's all around us. It's the ground upon which we stand. The well-worn paths. And the ones that haven't been forged. It's our history. and are what lies ahead. It's ours to nurture and to protect. We're a force for community and for country. We have the skills to define our future and our nation's future, to make a stand. For our way of life. And we will so promise back into the land of the free. Individually, we're trailblazers. Pioneers, preservationists. United, we are the keepers of the dream. And we are on guard.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, it's very, very well done. But I guess it's just that it seems that the definition of what the National Guard is for is changing. And I think that's my point. You know, were the National Guard ever meant to be the keeper of the dream? The keepers of the dream? I don't know. Maybe that doesn't strike you as off in any way, but it sort of, I mean, not overly, but it sort of does with me. So, did we get to the end of that? Yeah, we did. Clean and swift. Clean and swift. Okay, the next one. No military intelligence has the same special access programs as the NSA and the CIA, and I'd mentioned that earlier. They all, post 9/11, have the same special access programs as NSA. They can all share intelligence. Why is this relevant? Well, I'm not sure. I think it's obviously relevant to what he's telling us, because I think he's telling us that some of these agencies cannot be trusted and they're compromised and they need to be cleaned, and so it would be it's a problem if there's special access programs that you need to keep designated just to one group because everybody can see it. Why is this relevant? Okay, I just went over that. Who can be held hostage and controlled? Well, I'm not exactly sure what he's looking at, but there is a little bit further clarification further down. The CIA thinks its foreign offshore assets are strong enough to defend against the U.S. executive, not accounting for military use on domestic soil. Now, when he says assets, they always use the word assets that's a person. That's not an asset like money in the bank or whatever, or whatever we would normally think of it as an asset. That is a person. So they're talking about their foreign offshore assets as in people or heads of state that are whatever. So they think that they're strong enough to defend against the U.S. executive, meaning the POTUS, but they're not accounting for military use on domestic soil. And what he's saying is that's what's coming. To me, he clearly stating that the military will be used on domestic soil. Why does the Constitution explicitly grant this authority to the president, and what is it to prevent? And again, I said insurrection, because then he can put down any insurrection. And then he says, they knew our agency would grow in power, so much so they could/can hold the executive hostage or engage with bad actors. Trump nominated someone new to direct every agency but one. He controls the top. So, like I said before, the head of the NSA, which is Admiral, I always do that. I can never say that word. Admiral Michael Rogers. Everyone else was replaced except for him, and he was a holdover from the Obama administration, which is odd that Trump kept him. So he obviously trusts him. And what he's saying is that he, Michael Rogers, he controls the top. Now, there's a lot that he's saying in here that I'm not sure that I completely understand what he's saying, but down here I put the Insurrection Act of 1807 is a United States federal law that governs the ability of the President of the United States to deploy military troops within the United States to put down lawlessness, insurrection, and rebellion. However, and then I put a link to the amendments, but the amendments include such thing as under the term insurrection, which I don't think it belongs under that term, but they include civil unrest, which I guess could be a form of an insurrection. It could be natural disaster. It could be terrorism on our own soil. And these things are now included. So, but the thing is, this is kind of, it kind of makes me nervous, because, and I'll tell you why. Because let's say you get a bunch of people together and, your right to free speech, you're going to say that you, disagree with abortion. But the party, whichever party is in control at that time, says, well, we don't agree with that. We think you're being whatever, and they can call that insurrection. They can call in the military. They can quell that. So I guess there's a lot of room for misuse there, which makes me a little uneasy. Well, just think of, what was it? Was it Kent State, where I can't remember, because it was before I was born, or else I was very young. I can't even remember when it happened, but I know that there were people killed on campus in America, and really that should never, ever have happened, ever. Okay, so November 1st, 2017, 1:27 a.m. Any persons making statements they will not be seeking re-election was put into submission. For the betterment of the country, not all will be prosecuted, and all will do as told. You will see more of this occur, not normal, yet disregarded, and even on the Democrat side. So this is interesting, because he's saying any persons making statements they will not be seeking re-election was put in submission. So, and then he says, for the betterment of the country, not all will be prosecuted, and all will do as told. Well, he's already told us previously that if they prosecuted everyone, it would be 70% of the government. You can't do that. I mean, you cannot prosecute 70% of the government. Imagine the cost, imagine the time. It would go on for years and years and years, and it would cost the country untold amounts. So, to me, it sounds like he's saying that if these people make a statement that they will not seek re-election for the betterment of the country, they'll not be prosecuted, but they will do as they're told. I don't know, because it could be read different ways. I really think you could take this different ways. But it says you will see more of this occur. More of what? And he says, not normal yet disregarded. And even on the Democrat side. So I'm really not 100% sure what he's talking to, but I said here it sounds like he's holding them hostage, i.e., he will let them escape prosecution if they do what they are told and don't seek re-election. That's what that sounds to me. If somebody else has a different take, put it down in the comments, because I'd be more than happy to see what anybody else has to say and how they take that. But that's how I take that. That, you know, he'll let them escape prosecution if they do what they're told and they don't seek re-election. And to me, that's kind of blackmail, isn't it? I won't prosecute you if you do what I say. Isn't that blackmail? I mean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds like blackmail. Okay, November 1st at 1:34 a.m. And Q says, follow up to last post. Return to comments re Pelosi and John McCain. Some of us refuse to say his last name for a reason. Now, I think he's just trying to be funny there. I don't really know why he would say that. But and I just put a little note there to myself that they're both having issues with memory. This all has meaning. Everything stated. Big picture stuff. Few positions allow for this direct knowledge. So he's saying there are very few positions in the government that would allow someone to have this overview of what's happening. And he's right. And then he says, interestingly enough, proof to begin 11/3. Now that is the date Podesta was indicted. But this post was written prior to that indictment. This post was written November 1st. And notice he had put that even further back. He had put that in a post of October 31st, that 11/3 Podesta would be indicted. So he was. So who would know that? Obviously, it can't be just somebody LARPing, because they would have absolutely no clue. Like, I don't know how somebody would have that knowledge unless they actually had that knowledge, you know? So it says, Q says, we all sincerely appreciate the work you do. Keep up the good fight. The flow of information is vital. God bless. Now, I think, you know, it's interesting because he's really aiming these at the patriots and people that are patriotic and love our country and are grieved by what is happening. That's who he's aiming these at. You know, let's go up. I'm going to take a break soon because, again, I don't want these to become so... actually, I think this is where I left off the last time, and I think I went over this much quicker than the last time. So, okay, yeah. We just have one more, and I'm going to break, and then I'm going to start the second one, and I'll get this uploaded, and it'll replace the one with the bad audio. So, Q is saying, follow up to last post. Return to comments, re Pelosi and John McCain. Okay, this is, I've already gone over that. So I'm going to break here. I think this seems like a very good place to break because the next part, I'm going to get into the stuff. See, I've been I have been on a journey, and I've been in certain places and to see certain things. And it's like I could never put all the pieces together because I'd just been in such unique positions of whatever to get pieces of information that in the end all fit together to form a very big picture. And part of it is my being in dominionism, but I could never truly figure the whole big picture out because it seemed beyond me. And so over time, it's like I got more and more pieces and more things fell together. And I guess it's alarming now because I'm seeing this actually happening. So I'm going to get into that on the next video. All right. Thank you so much. If you liked it, like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.